Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Splash into Sydney. It's actually steaming, raining, but it's actually steaming into Sydney. So we're delighted. My name is Marian Morgan-Bindon. I'm the chair of the IFLA Public Library section. And for our welcome to country, would you please acknowledge Uncle Ray Davison?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. My name is Uncle Ray Davison. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Lands Council. The Lands Council has members being the custodians to the clan groups of the Eora Nation. Give me permission today to come along and welcome you to country. Also being a traditional owner, I'm here on behalf of the Eora people of the Eora to welcome you to Aboriginal land. I've heard that we have some visitors from overseas, so on behalf of the Australian people here today, I'd like to say to those visitors, welcome to Australia and welcome to the Eora. And just explain a little bit before I actually continue on with welcome to country. I don't have a set speech or a set talk when I do welcome to country. I do what I call having a yarn. And within that yarn, I deliver the protocols of welcome to country. Now, welcome to country really is unique. It doesn't happen anywhere else around the world. And we've had welcome to country here in Australia for thousands of years. And we've always performed and had welcome to country when we have big celebrations and big corroborees. And we perform by song and dance. And it's no different today as I'm doing it orally. It's no less significant. It has the same importance. And I've been invited along today to invite you all once again to Aboriginal country. And it's really special. Like today's a gathering, today's a corroboree. So I'm here to welcome you on behalf of the Gadigal people. Now, my people, the Gadigal people, for those, especially for those people that are visiting here today, maybe for the first time, Sydney here, Circular Quay is quite famous, I suppose, because of the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. And I cheekily say this with apologies to other traditional people that might be in the room today or may hear this in the future, that this is the best traditional land in Australia, in the most beautiful city, in the most beautiful country in the world. And we know that there's wonderful places to go to in Australia, the Daintree and Uluru and all those different places. It's all wonderful, and all of Australia is wonderful traditional land. And I don't mean any nastiness in the way that I say that, but I do say that with cheekiness. Anyway, my people, the Gadigal people, are one of 29 clans that make up the Eora Nation. And our clan land boundaries, or my clan land boundaries, run from Circular Quay up to a local suburb here, Redfern, about 2 kilometres away. And within those boundary Gadigal people, once again, we are one of 29 clans that make up the Eora Nation. And our clan land boundaries are the 3 rivers of Sydney. And I love telling people about that because we're the people of the Eora regard those 3 rivers as sacred. And I say it this way each and every time I say welcome to country, because it's really special and unique. The 3 rivers are, and I really truly do love saying it this way, the 3 rivers are the wonderfully handsome Georges River, Hawkesbury River, I should say, to the north, with its wonderful coves and inlets. Out to the west here where I'm facing, the beautiful Nepean River, with its wonderful sandy shores and beautiful agricultural land. It's been the fruit bowl of this area for thousands of years, and it continues to do it today. Down to the south, the Georges River with its wonderful mangroves, animal life and bird life, and beyond me, the ocean and waters beyond. Within those boundaries, once again, are the 29 clans of the Eora Nation. And once again, I'm here today to welcome you to Aboriginal land. It's quite marvellous, because I always take the opportunity when giving welcome to country to remind people that we have one mother, and that's Mother Earth. No matter who we are, where we come from, we're all part of the same. So it doesn't matter. Most people here today, you're Australian people, I say, your heritage is overseas, as long as our visitors here today. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Your heritage is part of you. It owns you, and you own it. And it's always there and will always be there. But wherever you're born, with the Australian people, you're born on country here within Australia. And in Australia, when we say to our visitors, when I say born on country, it's not born on Australia. It's born in your area of Australia. So when you're born on country, for those people here today that may be born within the Sydney region, the Eora region, my region, as I give welcome today, it's not Aboriginal or non-Aboriginal thing, it's being born on country. So as I give welcome here today, it doesn't matter if you're not non-Aboriginal. If you're born on country, you're part of country. So as I give welcome today, I give welcome today on your behalf for those people outside of this area. And then all those other Australians born within the out in the West or other states, as I give welcome today, once again, as I've done it a moment ago, to our visitors from overseas, I do welcome today on your behalf as well, because you are part of country. I'd like to take this moment to pay respects to elders and descendants, both past and present, of the Eora people, and on their behalf, welcome each and every one of you here today, and just remind you that each time we have opportunity to pay respects to elders past and present, because I'm on my traditional land here today, where thousands of my ancestors have gone before me. We've been here for thousands of years, and thousands of my ancestors have gone before me. So therefore, at any given time, we believe, especially when we pay respects to elders past and present, that those people are around us, our ancestors are around us. So you'll understand when I say at the end what I'm about to say, what it means. But also, each and every one of us, no matter who we are or where we come from, our ancestors are around us all the time. So as I pay respects to my elders past and present, I'd like to pay respects to elders past and present of every person in this room. So no matter who you are, where you come from, your people are around you wherever you go. And for those people within Australia, born on country, wherever you may be, wherever that country may be, each and every time you leave that country and come home to that country, it's not just your direct ancestors who are there saying hello and goodbye to you. It's the people that have gone before you for thousands of years. They're there also saying hello and goodbye to you each time, because they know you once again, because you're born on country. So once again, it's really wonderful, and it's wonderful in regards to coming to such a forum here today as this, because I get a little bit of time to actually do a bit of a yarn instead of just coming up and doing the welcome and going straight off. So it's not just from a traditional point of view, but it's from an urban Aboriginal Australian point of view of being born in the best city in the world, and being born way back in 1950, and being born at the place where the Europeans first landed, which is La Perouse, just down the road a little bit, and this being my area, a very, very idyllic place to be born in and grow up in, and to work within the city area all my life. I worked the waterfront and such, and drove trucks and things like that in the days when the waterfront here in Sydney was the only people I could see the waterfront. And I tell you this because of an urban Australian point of view. If you've all seen our city today, it's quite beautiful, you know. And over the years, but especially back in the 60s and 70s, it was a little bit ugly with the greyness and blackness, and the people of moving out, but moving people from the majority of people in the before those years lived within the city areas, and they moved them out to the suburbs in those days. Anyway, it's been beautified since then, and it's always been a beautiful city. I say ugly, but that's, once again, that's just tongue in cheek. It's not real. It's the most beautiful city in the world. But today, and I'm trying to get across to you that once again, just not from a traditional point of view, but from an urban Australian point of view, we're actually growing up on this area and seeing the changes. But back in those days, I'm talking about the 60s and 70s, when I was a young truckie, the only people I've seen the waterfront in the Sydney area were the people such as myself and the wharfies, because there were big walls around everything. But they've been taken down over the years, and thankfully that's mainly to our mayor today, Clover Moore, and the City of Sydney Council. So we have wonderful walkways and pathways all around the Sydney area, and your tourists, the people from our visitors, I should say, should take advantage of that and have a look around. So once again, even today, if you see these sandstone buildings out here, it's a reminder that Mother Earth is looking after us every day, because the old sandstone buildings, especially from the mint just up the road here, the mortar used within those sandstone that comes from right here in Sydney are the shells that my people collected over the thousands of years. They were used as mortar. So there's history all around us here, and I get the opportunity to come out and speak to people about that, and it's quite, each time I do it, I feel really, really privileged. So for you here today, for me to give you a welcome, I really, really enjoy it. So just in closing, I'd like to say on behalf of the Gadigal people, may the spirits of my ancestors walk beside you and protect you whilst you're on Gadigal land, you're a country, as I know they walk beside and protect me. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful forum. Thank you.
That was such a genuine welcome, and I'm very grateful for Uncle Ray for welcoming us into his beautiful city and lands today. I'd now like to ask Cameron Morley, who's the Acting Executive Director of Public Libraries New South Wales. I think he's outside. Oh, he's here. Sorry. He was here before and I've lost him. Cameron, State Library, I'm very grateful to State Library for their sponsorship of this event in the auditorium, their staff time who assisted us. And Cameron, on behalf of State Library, would like to welcome you all as well.
Thanks, Marian, and good morning, everybody. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Gadigal people, and our interstate and international delegates. It's a great thrill for the State Library to be able to host this today, and we're very much the sort of library where we want to get the people from around New South Wales who work in libraries to come here and use this place as a forum. And as I say, it's such a thrill to have people from further afield to this. And we know that IFLA does some fantastic things around the world. We are always sort of keeping up with the sorts of things that IFLA are doing in terms of statements and policies and the sorts of things that they do in different countries around the world. So for us to be able to actually have people representing IFLA here is fantastic. As the day progresses, we'll get to hear from a few people from New South Wales public libraries and other public libraries around Australia about the great things they're doing in this STEM or STEAM environment. And I look forward to talking with as many of you as possible over the breaks, and hopefully the weather clears up for our boat trip tonight. So thanks again. It's our pleasure to host this, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cameron. So welcome to the IFLA Public Library Section 2017 Mid-Term Meeting. I too would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to the Gadigal people of the Aurora Nation as the traditional custodians of the land, and to their elders past, present and future. I'd like to acknowledge Cameron, Sue McGregor as CEO of ALIA, the Australian Professional Organisation peak body, Margaret Allen, who's CEO of the State Library of Western Australia and an IFLA Governing Board member. Christine McKenzie will be joining us tomorrow. Christine is the Treasurer of IFLA, and this morning in the early hours it was announced that she is the President-elect. So we have an Australian who will be leading the international organisation very shortly. I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsors, James from Civica. I saw James before. Please say hello to James when you see him. And Robert Knight is up the back from Public Libraries, representing Public Libraries New South Wales. We're very delighted, as I said, to host the mid-term meeting, and after some 6 years of cajoling our colleagues who are on the other side of the country, a large number of our folk have joined us today. And in the breaks, I'd like you to have a chat to them, and just networking at these events is really wonderful, and it's a great opportunity to share stories. So I'm going to ask them to just stand up and say hello. We've got Lo from Sweden. We have Leitney from Norway. We have Corinne from Chattanooga in the USA at the back. Corinne's got the closing session on Friday afternoon, so Lebush from the Czech Republic. Hitomi from Japan, Monsi from Barcelona in Spain, Suzette from Brassard in Canada, Suzanne, and of course Jane Richards. And coming in this morning on a 6:30 flight is the Oz from the Netherlands. So,
Good morning.
The language today is IFLA English. And the reason for that is our STEAM colleagues who you met are actually incredibly clever and they think and speak in multiple languages. So just stepping off the plane, we just need our speakers to consider. And sometimes Australians can speak really fast, so I'm trying my very best to speak. So our language today is IFLA English, and it just gives us all that opportunity to digest the wonderful stories that you will have. So wonderful to have you all here in-house, and you may have noticed up there in the top corner, we're actually streaming this event with many thanks to Ellen and her folk here at the State Library. Our Twitter feed is IFLA STEaM, all one word, and that's written on your program. And without further ado, and to keep us on time, because we do have an ambitious program, I'd like to introduce our first keynote, Dr. Carolyn McGregor. Carolyn is the Research Chair in Health Economics at the University of Ontario, Ontario's Institute of Technology in Canada. We're delighted to have Carolyn with us today, and her full biography is on a blog, so please have a look at that. But could I please welcome Carolyn to share her paper, The Trends and Opportunities to Bring STEAM Research into the Community Through Public Libraries. And I'll just ask Ellen to set this up. Please welcome Carolyn.
Thank you very much and good morning. As a native Australian who now lives out of country, the Welcome to Country was very special to me. So thank you very much for enabling not just an acknowledgement of the land, but a welcome to country this morning. And for those of you that are a little sad about the weather, can I tell you when the sun rises in Toronto, where I live at the moment, it will be -9. So it's not that bad. Then I keep writing back to my friends, well, yes, it is raining a little bit, but it is 20 degrees or so I can't complain. Anyway, I was really delighted when I was asked to give this talk because it's really made me reflect about my own personal journey in life and the valuable contributions that public libraries have. I'm not saying that just because I was asked to do this. As you'll see, this is really very genuine. And it has enabled me to think about my research in health informatics and what I can share with you about what's coming and the new directions in life, in community, and what that presents for you. I find all of you very creative people in ways that you think about how can we bring these messages to community. So some of the things I will share with you are my ideas about things I know that you can utilise now. But also I'm sharing what we're doing in our research, what's new in STEM and STEAM, for you then to imagine and create how you can bring these messages, because I truly believe you're very talented people. I just need to disclose, as we always do, that some of my work is being commercialised. I don't think that'll impact my presentation today, and I have no other conflicts. I also do want to provide a disclaimer. In my research, I work with providing new computing systems to very, very important populations. Some of you may find the photography of some of the images a little confronting. So there are photos of babies who are undergoing neonatal intensive care and also some of the military law enforcement. So I will give warning because it's something very close to my heart and close to here, that I do have just newspaper articles from photos from the Link Cafe event. I want to disclose that because I acknowledge it's a very important event for the people who are involved in that, and it's a very important reason that I'm bringing that subject up. So just a disclaimer, if you need to leave, I won't take offence. So as I said, I'm going to talk to you today about my journey with libraries and why I think what you do is so important, from a child and all through my journey. I'm going to talk about disruptive innovation, and when I talk about it, you'll see that some of these areas you naturally take into consideration yourself, and you're creating makerspaces, you've got 3D printing. There's other types of ways now with other disruptive innovation you can start to think about what you can do. And I'm going to talk about my areas, which is largely to do with data analytics and analysing it for health, wellness, but it has direct impact in the communities. And so I've thought of some examples myself that we know of how this can apply to teaching people for even their own self-empowerment. And then you can start to think about how you can engage that. And some of my wellness work actually comes from the work in space with space medicine. So I have some things with that. So I hope that you'll find it interesting. This is where my journey begins, really. I found some photos that I could include. These the bottom photos for the libraries are not my own, but ones that, with Narnia books and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that I could relate to. I am the daughter of a librarian's clerical assistant, as it turns out. I never thought I'd be able to bring my mum into my talks, but there you go. So I spent many years. She was worked in a number of school libraries though. And so if I was not well enough to go to school, but I didn't really have to be at home, then I always got taken to the library, sitting with my mum. So learning about book repair, learning about the setting up of these beautiful displays to encourage children was something that I grew up with. And I don't think I really realised how much that entrenched the value of libraries in my life until even just recently and before I was asked to do this. And, the old cards, I'm very familiar with all of those. This is where I come from. This is where many people in my age demographic come from, even if they don't get dragged by their mothers into the library environment all the time. And I've progressed from that to be very comfortable in the library scenario when I was doing my university studies, my PhD studies. Although a lot of what I do now is online, I still walk into the library even at the university. And we have a beautiful library in my community. I live in the outer area of the Toronto suburban sprawl, and we have a beautiful new library that's fitted out with some amazing resources, whether it's computing and magazines and the books and ebooks, and we just have such fantastic resources. My daughter drags along, she's 13 now, she drags along her cart with this many books. So what you do is very special. And so, as I said, I'm considering all of that with how I can give you information about what we do in STEM and what you can consider about what you need to be involving and allowing people in the community to be involved in. So I want to talk a little bit about disruptive innovation because these things are game changers in life, and they change the way we think and the way we operate. So Amazon, first of all, a lot of people think about it from the perspective of it meant that stores like Phoenix are no longer around. People have a different buying pattern. People want ebooks in libraries. But from my world, from the data analytics world, they were the first organisation that could identify personally you as a customer, your gender, your age, your location to a certain extent. And it meant that they were able to start profiling people and groups of people in very different ways and open up a lot of new opportunities. It led to a lot of the customer loyalty cards that you have. And as much as you get all those rewards, it's largely so that they can associate you with your purchases. It really changed the environment. YouTube has really changed the way that people interact and utilise media and whether they used to traditional television broadcasting or follow certain YouTubers. I know in my children's case, I never expected that my 11-year-old son would be wanting to, publicise on YouTube, playing different games, but that is the life that they're growing up with. And creating familiarity with YouTube and creating makerspaces where people can make YouTube videos is an important thing in the community. On the right-hand side, in the middle, as I mentioned, 3D printing. Yes, I am a Star Wars fan. And a lot of libraries now already have those 3D printers and makerspaces. And then, as I said, on the right, iPads. That's very much changed the way people interact with technology and with app stores, etc. And Pokemon Go. Yes, I've been sucked into playing Pokemon Go. Initially, it was walking around as the hotspot for my son. I have a new role in life. And it's always interesting to me. I haven't actually turned it on here, but, you know, libraries end up being poker spots, and people come all the time to that. But it also just presents an amazing, successful story of finally getting augmented reality in the community. But if, you know, people are coming to the libraries for pokey spots and you embrace that and you then encourage them to do more at the library than just spin the disc, then at least, you know, it's bringing people perhaps to the libraries who haven't been there before. But in my world, some of the main disruptive innovations are sensing devices to sense personal health. And I wear a smartwatch today. Actually, normally wouldn't, because I say that they don't allow me to get the data I need. With the Apple Watch, we can actually collect all the data and do analysis on it. Some of the other devices, Fitbit, Jawbone, don't allow you to do that. But one of the aspects that you'll see from my work today is that we're learning so much about high-frequency physiologic monitoring. And it really has potential for people in the community, for their wellness, for their mental health, and a number of other perspectives. And so I give you, I guess, a challenge of thinking about, if you haven't got tools, yes, you have things like 3D printers, but what can we do to start allowing people to understand these types of devices and allowing them to work together and come together and think about how they can be understanding how their own wellness, or the spectrum of their own wellness, or, you know, coming together as groups, and can libraries play a part in that? So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in healthcare. So my predominant research is providing new computing systems. I started my work in Australia, was headhunted to progress this now in Canada, and finally, with my work maturing, we're bringing it also back to Australia. But these are types of devices that I work with. And on the left, it's an old analog device that's used in neonatal intensive care. On the right, you would also probably class it as old now. These devices on the right are about 10 years old, but the devices in critical care usually take about 15 years to cycle. But the main difference you can see between the two is, on the one on the right is in colour. Now, in the background, from a biomedical engineering perspective, there's some great advancements they've made, but they didn't provide more detail and information and value to the people who use it, because they're not answering questions about, are they developing the infection? Is the oxygen level right for the baby in terms of their developing eye? Are they having spells, which means that they have pauses in breathing, and is that coupled with falls in heart rate? You know, those types of questions still weren't being answered by these devices. And I had a background in working, similar to the work with Amazon, I had a background in starting to understand people's saving and spending patterns for St George Bank. And then I was headhunted to do the same sort of thing for Woolworths, to start understanding what everyone puts in their trolleys when you go shopping, so that they can, and yes, you might say it's my fault. You know, when you go into a grocery store and they completely reorganise the store, and where is everything? They're trying to group things together that people tend to buy together. Yes, I'm afraid that might have been some of our doing. But nonetheless, it's the same idea then, to analyse a different type of data, which is analysing patient data. So this is a diagram demonstrating the type of thing that happens with a premature baby. They can be born up to 17 weeks early. Head and torso can fit in an adult male's hand, and they weigh about 0.5 kilogram. And it can be anything from there up to a baby who's 37 weeks onwards, having struggle with breathing, or etc. And so they can have any myriad of different of these devices. So I'm not sure if this pointer will work, but on the bottom left, the oxygen saturation monitor, usually on the foot, so it stays there. They can be fed through a feeding tube going round clockwise. Depending on their age, they may or may not be on a ventilator to help them breathe. They're in an incubator, overhead warmer. They have electrocardiogram or heart rate monitoring, helps also to monitor their breathing. And they can receive various fluids, medication, nutrition through the IV pump on the right-hand side. We've seen very sick babies with 13 infusion pumps, very tiny. It's a very confronting environment for the parents, but there's a rich amount of data that's just displaying on screens, and they're trying to process in real time. So this is some interesting statistics that even the doctors I work with haven't thought about. A baby's heart rate is roughly double that of an adult, so 130 beats a minute, around 8,000 beats every hour. 2,000 times in an hour they breathe roughly, and they monitor blood oxygen 3,600 times. Traditional paper charting when I started was one number, for each of those would get written down. And as you'll see, what we've been able to evolve to now is with these types of devices you can wear, these types of things become relevant in the community. It's the similar types of numbers, only the heart rate is halved. And what I wanted to do, there was some early work, I won't go into detail, but they were showing that there is potential that monitoring heart rate and breathing and blood oxygen saturation actually had similar patterns before traditional diagnosis of a number of conditions. So we had the potential that we could give them this environment to collect all of that data, that they could then start to detect these conditions earlier. But the way they were doing it wasn't scalable. It wasn't something that could be implemented in clinical practice. They were just starting to get indications, and they needed a systemic platform. So I'm a computer scientist by training, right down the road at UTS. I really am local. And so what I wanted to do was to give them that sort of platform. And the other reason that this is very important is because of the way they currently try to detect infection. So it's usually a well-trained nurse that says that baby's not the same baby as when I was on shift yesterday. They're just not behaving the same. And this represents vials of blood. So any human has 80 mils of blood per kilo, and you have 40 mils then for a half kilogram little baby. They need to take 2 mils of blood to try and detect and grow cultures for infection. And if they have infection, 2 days later, they take another 2 mils. So they've taken 10 mils of their blood volume. And it takes any baby, no matter when they're born, a month for their body to start generating blood. So they're literally sucking them dry of blood with their current diagnostics. And they have to transfuse blood, which can introduce problems. So what I wanted to do was to be able to create an environment to collect lots of data and to be able to make sense of it and find patterns in it. I won't go into a lot of the science, but I want to show you that this particular chart, it shows our metrics on an hourly basis. And the main thing I want you to look at is the second column from the right-hand side, and note that that is when they detected or suspected that the baby had infection. If I said to you that the blue says that nothing's wrong, light blue is a problem with just the heart rate, yellow heart rate and respiration, and pink heart rate, respiration, blood oxygen, and red all of those in blood pressure, you can see that there is a story unfolding. Things are good, things are good. And for many, many hours beforehand, we were showing yellow and pink and red. We were detecting, just by looking at heart rate and respiration, blood oxygen, something wasn't right. And so we've gone on from that. We're looking at new ways to try and visualise this in complex ways, but in a manner that's intuitive for them. And we've also been helping them with things like oxygen analytics. So unfortunately, my image is blocking Stevie Wonder. So that is what's up in the top right-hand corner. Stevie Wonder is blind. People know that. Does anyone know why? Now that's the librarian. I'll look it up. Now, Stevie Wonder's blind because he was born premature in the 1940s at a very early stage of oxygen therapy, where they gave these babies extra oxygen because it has value in developing immature organs. But what they didn't realise initially was too much oxygen damages the developing retina. So a number of premature babies go blind because of the oxygen levels, or what they believe is the oxygen levels. And it's still a problem that exists today. And if you're only looking at one reading every hour and plotting the trajectory, this chart on the left shows the day shift, the night shift, just with one reading every hour. And on the bottom is what happened when we looked at all of them. And the green is the target range and how much do we want them in the target range. So you can see just broadly that it's different. When you look then on an hourly basis, we can give them hourly trajectories. It's just what we can do if we apply computing to this problem. What we recognise, though, in Australia and Canada is we have a lot of hospitals in rural and remote communities. We need to deploy systems like this without having someone locally to have to take care of it. It means we have to run it in what I believe you all know is the cloud. So the computing runs outside of your environment. So in my work, we've done research where a hospital in the United States, it's an 80-bed neonatal intensive care unit. We had up to 27 of their babies online at any point in time. who satisfied our study criteria. The data was being sent, de-identified to our university where we ran analytics and we could provide information. And we did that again on an infection study about trying to detect infection earlier. So these things are very important now for us. We try and deploy in Australia and in Canada, utilising this type of data. And this truly is international work. I have partners from many areas around the world that I wanted to just acknowledge. But now, as I mentioned, we are in a very different paradigm where many people wear Fitbits and Jawbones. They utilise a number of medical devices that are just consumer grade, which means that we're not really sure of the quality and the consistency. But nonetheless, people enjoy using them to learn about themselves. In our work, we're aware that the idea of remote healthcare has been around for a long time, even though people think it's only the last 10 to 15 years. This is a newspaper, for those, I think it's still clear for those watching it on streaming. This is a magazine article from 1924. And with the joys of the internet, through a library, I was able to get a copy of this full magazine and actually read the article. And the architecture actually, using componentry of the time, would have worked. And they developed it just as a joke. But it is more than just video streaming. It's fully integrated diagnostic interchange. And that's what we're trying to achieve today. And this is a new style of healthcare that is coming because of this prevalence now of devices that aren't just used in critical care, but they're used in the general community for people who are dealing with chronic heart issues, a number of different conditions. There is now a whole new approach that we can have with the engagement with hospitals, with the engagement with specialists through more ongoing long-term monitoring. Some work that we did with the graduates of neonatal intensive care with a little baby who went home. A lot of the babies go home with monitoring. Can you imagine being a parent taking out one of these monitors and having your baby connected and having all these numbers flashing? I'm glad I didn't have to do that in my case. But these are the types of things that we can start to think about helping support. And, you know, how can you work as educators in the community to help people start to understand this new style of healthcare? But it doesn't just relate to things like chronic heart conditions or diabetic patients in the community. It actually has major implications for mental health support. And that may sound very surprising, but I'll share with you why. I wanted to start off by sharing with you one of the reasons that I think this is very important in the community, and one of the things that I think you can start to think about in terms of how you can apply this. We live in a world where a number of people try and deal with stress. Children, adolescents, adults, the elderly, they're all coming into your library spaces. And these people need to have tools and techniques to be able to help them understand it, understand where they're at, and to try and introduce some sort of countermeasure, as the space medicine people would say, or some mechanism to help them. So I'm going to be presenting to you now about stress, but in two very elite populations for which our research is very complex, but it's still the same problem in the community. And I'm going to talk to you about first responders, so police officers, firefighters, paramedics, even nursing staff. But my work particularly is with tactical operators and how they deal with stresses, and also with astronauts in space. But as I go through this, the techniques, the algorithms, we're people, and it applies. There are a number of recent studies showing that the behaviour of your heart has direct correlation with a number of mental health conditions: post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety. And even initially with our early work showing that the behaviour of the heart can demonstrate whether you're well or unwell with a virus or some form of infection. If you think about it yourself, if you have a cold and you go and get to work and you don't feel very well and you get a shock, it's like, oh, well, okay. And you're not reacting. And also you find it very hard to be restful and to be calm when you're not feeling well. what's happening is that the variance that your nervous system usually has to regulate your heart is suppressed. And so your heart rate starts to become very similar. And we used to think that a very similar heart rate meant you're healthy. It's actually the reverse. The ability for your nervous system to speed up and slow down your heart rate demonstrates a well-functioning system. And so when you have infection, one of the things we look for is the beat-to-beat distance and the variance from beat to beat to beat to beat, or how similar they are. And it starts to give us an indication of wellness. And it turns out that type of measure is what we can use also for mental health. And for a number of conditions, there's been a direct correlation with the more reduced the variance is in your heart rate, the higher you have in a score in a number of these different conditions by traditional paper scoring. So this is why this type of new style of monitoring has a number of implications. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about resilience. So one of the things that you can do to combat and deal with stress is developing a level of resilience. And so your resilience needs to be both in terms of what you develop individually, what can be external, like in terms of external harm reduction, protection, promotion, and trying to ensure your body doesn't adapt incorrectly to having to deal with those stresses. And the population that I had great fortune to be introduced to is, as I said, with tactical operators. I had a very fortunate discussion to have a what do you do conversation with someone with a lot of tactical experience. And I started and said that I was monitoring babies and monitoring their heart rate and their breathing and their blood oxygen and looking for patterns. And he said, that's interesting, because that's what we have to do with tactical operators. Because if their heart rate goes too high, they can pass out. If they forget to breathe, they can get tunnel vision, physical tunnel vision, they can pass out. And that's the last thing you want to have happen to them for their own safety and for what they're trying to achieve. And they have to learn to manage their own body. They have to remember to breathe. They have to learn to calm their body down. So what we decided to do was say, I wonder what would happen if we used my environment as part of their training. So as I mentioned, this is the type of context. We're not just talking about regular police officers. We're talking about those that try and deal with these types of situations. I won't dwell on it. So they practice by stacking up outside of a building or an area and then deploying. They use artificial building scenarios. They use now computer virtual reality gaming scenarios to look at that as well, even virtual reality cave environments, to try and give them those repeatable environments where they can practice and get themselves used to and help them to manage. But what they didn't do in these scenarios was look at measuring their own physiology while they did it. Because what we're learning now about conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, which is having more and more prevalence, is that we need to understand how they're reacting to these stresses. And we believe that we have great potential to help them in training if we can make the scenarios more realistic and evaluate how they're dealing with it at the time. Then it will be better if they're dealing with a real-world scenario. I'm also working with, at the university where I am in Canada, there's the local startup who's created a haptic garment. And there are all different types of haptic devices that are coming out that give you feedback. So this particular garment you wear, it gives you muscle stimulation, vibration, so that if you're firing in the game, you can feel it on your shoulder. Or if you get hit, unfortunately, you can feel it, not to the same extent, but there is some repercussion, rather than just a voice on your shoulder saying, you've been hit, which really doesn't help the operators. So we have created this integrated environment where they play a virtual reality game and they can play it in teams, and then we can measure their physiology. So what I just want to show you on the right is that we can do things like, and I don't know whether, hopefully the people streaming can see this as well. The purple line at the bottom represents heart rate over time. So you'll see a rise here. The black dot at the top here is where they kick the door open and start the exercise. So you see things like a rise in heart rate. This blue line here is oxygen saturation. So the rise in heart rate leads to a fall in blood oxygen saturation. And then there's active engagement and actually when they hit the person they're going after. The bottom one here is showing a marksmanship activity because they need to learn to do a breath pause after an inhalation and fire. So we're showing that we can gather that type of information. But the main reason I'm showing this is it's the same technology that we can take to understand people's physiologic response in the community if they come to a stressful situation in traffic, stressful situation in a parking space, or at a lining up to buy your groceries. We can help them to measure the way that their body's reacting. So when they go and see the psychologist, psychiatrist, they have actual information about themselves. So this type of thing is what we're now working on, to try and create these types of tools to bring them out to the community for students dealing with exams. We have studies with mindfulness in our student populations in the university environment to help them throughout semester, dealing with the stresses of semester. And so I also want to talk about another aspect, which is to do with wellness. In my initial work with the babies, we were trying to detect when they developed conditions, when they developed disease. But one of the things that's very important that I learned from the astronaut population is you want to know where you are in the spectrum of wellness. It always happens when I start talking about this, and I hear that. And, But so all of you are going to be exposed to sneezing, coughing, germs, but you may or may not be able to fight it off on your own, and you may need some assistance with it. And a lot of that depends, I don't know why that's not, a lot of that depends on where you are in the wellness spectrum. And there's a lot of work that particularly Russia, through their space program, have been doing in this area. I was very fortunate to be introduced to a former astronaut now for Canada, Dr. Dave Williams, emergency physician who trained to be an astronaut. And he and I met, and his interest was in real-time monitoring using the physiologic data, just as I am, but with an application for space and also then for what it could mean for Earth. So we started to look at how my work could be reapplied for pre-mission monitoring, measuring the impact of weightlessness. And that's why it's actually very similar to the work with the babies, because babies go from weightlessness to gravity, and astronauts go from gravity to weightlessness. And in both scenarios, what the body's trying to do at that point in time is different to what it's having to deal with. And so we have to monitor them to see how they're dealing with weightlessness. Radiation, they can also develop traditional things that can happen on Earth, and their mental health state is very important to assess. Now, you may think that this is still an area that's space medicine, it's only for a few and it's way out there and we don't have to think about it. The concept of colonisation could potentially be within my children's lifetime or their children's lifetime. The mission to Mars is planned to happen. As I said, we'll go through some research that I'm involved with now with an international group to prepare the astronauts for that long-range mission. Because the plan at the moment is a 500-day mission to go into the orbit of Mars. And so there's a number of days to get there, a number of days to get back. And during that window, they're going to be out of contact with Earth for weeks at a time. So we have to try and get systems built for that. So this is the type of monitoring Dr. Williams did initially when he was on the Neuralab mission, one of the space shuttle missions. And you can see it's very cumbersome, the way it's being monitored, but they did gather some very interesting information during that. And they do monitor the astronauts, cosmonauts on the space station. Their medical checks are only weekly, but they are collecting some data on a more regular basis for research. So as I mentioned before, both actually have, it's a very stressful thing on the body to deal with the adaptation for both the babies and the astronauts. People used to say to me, really, babies and astronauts? And that's the connection. So I won't go into too much detail about the technical architecture, but mainly the take-home message for this is this top shape here is what would happen on board the aircraft. We take in data from the astronauts, we can analyse it, store it, discover new information, display analytics we currently know. And then when they have contact with mission control, we can pull all the data down and discover new things. So this architecture in here, just so that you know, this is based on the work that I did with the babies, this part here. So it's known as Artemis, after the Greek goddess of childbearing. The application for the tactical operators is called Athena, named after the Greek goddess of warfare and wisdom. We got on a roll, what can I say? So this is an example of a monitoring device that's ruggedized for use in space that we're using in our research as well. It's what's being used with the Russian space program. It's like a Holter monitor, but a very ruggedized one for use in space. So the collection of electrocardiogram and heart rate information is still done collect and store, and we're trying to change that now to come up with a ruggedized device that can stream it live. But in Russia, they've been doing a lot of work on doing these experiments of capturing windows of time, because particularly the Russian cosmonauts have been going up for 6-month and 1 year terms. So we've got some interesting data that can be collected there. So this is the first work that we did formally as part of the Space Collaborative, where there was an all-female crew. So this is a very interesting story to tell to children, to people in general. It was the first time they had a simulated moon mission with an all-female crew, 7 days, and they were isolated in the Mars 500 isolation facility that is at the Russian Institute for Biomedical Problems, and I was over there in December. I forgot to put the slides in. They're on my Twitter feed though. And so they were isolated in essentially the transport chambers, trying out all sorts of things, from things like these suits that women wear, because they've never done any proper research on suits that women wear in space. And also looking at how we can start to collect using the STEAM devices using space and start running this real-time analytics. What we're looking at is, these are some analysis of wellness that we've been translating from Russian. The main take-home message is, over here is the green. There's 2 metrics, and if you're in this quadrant, it means that you're at the upper end of wellness. If you're in this quadrant, it's sort of a yellow, if you like. It's that intermediate state of wellness. Pre-morbid state here is that if someone's coughing around you, you're very likely to be susceptible. And here you're in a pathological state. You have some issue, then you drop down to here. So it always happens. More people start to cough. So traditionally their work plotted just 1 point. There's so much data to deal with. They plotted 1 point. In our work, we're plotting points every 5 minutes to show them how they actually move throughout the day, which they've never been able to do before. These are some of the lower level analytics, some of the ladies that were involved when they were practicing setting up the equipment. But this is something that I wanted to share. Dr. Dave Williams now, and I don't have any rights with the book or anything, but this is a great example that I wanted to share. There is a lot of new things coming out from these different astronauts and people in space that they're trying to really target and educate children. And I thought this was fantastic when I saw it, because I know, and I worked with Dave Williams, and as I said, really not trying to push his book, but trying to demonstrate a concept. He's created this book called To Burp or Not to Burp, where he really explains in great terms for children. It's all about things that can happen to your body in space. And I've had some fascinating chats with Russian cosmonauts who were there for 6 months, just about the logistics of living and in space, and it's fascinating stories to share. And they get to see the most amazing aurora borealis unfolding, the fact that, they go, the time it takes them to completely go around the Earth. There are some fascinating resources, particularly the new astronauts and cosmonauts, the ones who are up there now. I think there's great opportunities for you to think about how you can empower the community in better knowledge about what's happening in space, because it really is something that is going to impact people in the lifetimes of the younger generations particularly. So they're the main things that I wanted to go through. In our work, we are progressing new avenues for computing. There's some great opportunities in your makerspaces to incorporate things like physiologic monitoring as part of your toolkit and allow people to experiment and use those types of devices. Be careful, as always, if they're trying to monitor other people. You've got to be very careful with your rules and regulations of how it's used, but, there's great potential in these type of things. We're working with a number of clinical doctors around the world, and other groups are forming as well. As I said, this is what is coming now in healthcare. So not only the genomic push, but the push of understanding your own physiology. We're looking at, there's more and more analytics coming out for different conditions. It's a very exciting time in that area. Lots of different devices now coming on the market. Be careful about thinking even for yourself whether it's commercial grade or if it's medical grade and what you're using it for, and make the judgments, because if it's commercial grade, it's not guaranteed at a quality for medical. And we're already working in a number of different areas. We're expanding from just working with the tactical operators to first responders in general and nursing, and looking at bringing it into the training programs. I'm really excited to have new work now that I'm starting at UTS to bring it all to Australia and also in Western Australia as well. I wanted to acknowledge my team. This is a photo that's a little bit older now, but demonstrates I have a multicultural, multigender, age differentiating, and from people from different disciplines coming together. You really need those in interdisciplinary environments. And even when you're creating things in your libraries, getting people from medicine to come and speak and engineers to come and speak, and you need all of those different disciplines. And I just want to acknowledge all of my different partners that I work with around the world. I want to particularly acknowledge, as I said, Dr. Dave Williams, who now is President and CEO of Hospital in Toronto. Peter Lawson, fellow Australian, now living in Toronto. And this is Roman Baevsky. He is in charge of cardiac research at the Russian Institute for Biomedical Problems and has been looking after astronauts and cosmonauts since the first Yuri Gagarin went to space. And he's in his 80s and still powering on, leading a team. So I wanted to acknowledge and thank the industry partners I have for my work, the funding I've received from Australia, Canada, United States, China, in fact all around the world. And if you want to follow our research, that's the Twitter feed. So thank you very much.
We've probably got time for one question, but Carolyn's joining us for morning tea. I think we'd all love a conversation with you. That was a truly inspirational speech. So would you please again thank What an amazing start. I'm slipping now into some housekeeping. In the event of emergency, we'll follow the lead of our state library colleagues here, who will take us where we should be. The restrooms are out this door. If you turn immediately right, then left. Morning tea will be in the McDonald room, which is just next door. And the conference dinner tonight, I didn't have that. I didn't have that before. I want my Apple Watch. The conference dinner, we have a couple of tickets left. They've become available. I can say the water taxi will depart at 6:30. So while the program does say 6:30, it's sayonara by then. So if you could be there by 6:15. There'll be a couple of opportunities to take selfies. We've got a banner here for the sustainability goals that we are part of and what we're actually looking to present to. And if you've got any questions, please speak to Jan or I. If you are interested in coming to the dinner tonight and haven't subscribed, please see us at the table outside. And I can just, Christine, we said hello to you before you were here. And Christine McKenzie, the President-elect from IFLA, is and Deborah Jacobs is also here from the Global Libraries Initiative of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Deborah, welcome very much. This is Deborah's first trip to Australia as well. We will be back at 11 and our sessions are a little bit differently this time. We've got a series of our keynotes, the wonderful inspirational talk that we've just had to kick off with, panel presentations where I hope you've done your chores and read the papers and are ready to talk to our expert presenters and some sessions. So our first of our panels is after morning tea, which starts at 11. And please say hello to all your international colleagues. We're delighted to have them here. Thank you very much.